Russia's once vast tank reserves are running dry. According to new OSINT data, only 32 tanks remain in decent condition on Russian storage bases, while thousands of others sit, rusting, stripped for parts, or beyond repair after nearly 3 years of full-scale war against Ukraine. OSINT researcher Jompy has published an updated analysis of Russia's armored reserves. The picture is stark. Most vehicles left in storage are in poor or irrecoverable condition, leaving only a few dozen tanks that could be called decent. Jompy's latest tabulation of vehicles sitting on Russian storage bases categorizes tanks by condition and repairability. Decent condition: 32 T-72B tanks. Poor condition: 1,332 tanks. The researcher says roughly 60% of these older T-64, T-72 Ural/A and T-80UD types are effectively non-recoverable. Worse/ruined condition: 1,178 tanks, described as beyond practical repair. Repairable stock consists of 684 vehicles broken down as T-55, 15, T-62, 377, T-72B, 292. Jompy notes that these counts reflect what remains on storage bases after large waves of reactivation, cannibalization for parts, and combat losses. A broader tally of depot-to-front movement shows how heavily Russia has already drawn down its mothballed stocks. According to Jompy's analysis of pre-war depot inventories versus what has been taken out for repair and deployment, Russia has recovered and returned to service 4,799 tanks, out of an estimated 7,342 kept in storage before the war. The most commonly reactivated models include T-80B/BV, about 1,409 restored, T-72B, 1,251, and T-62, 1,048. Modern models have been brought back in far smaller numbers. T-90, 112 of pre-war stock. T-80U/UD, 111 of 193, and T-72 Ural/A, 582 of 1,142. The T-64 family also shows relatively few returns, 110 of 752. The picture repeats across other vehicle types. From an estimated 7,121 BMP-class IFVs stored pre-war, Jompy reports 4,999 have been mobilized for use, leaving only a small proportion of truly serviceable spares in depots. Artillery inventories have thinned as well. Of roughly 23,602 pre-war artillery pieces, some 14,486 have been recovered for use, and an estimated 39% of the original stock now remains in storage. MLRS figures are similarly stressed. Jompy counts 29 BM-30 SMERSH systems reactivated out of 43,234, Uragan out of 472, and 1,027 Grad systems out of 1,068, leaving roughly 18% of pre-war MLRS stocks still present in storage. Russia has exhausted more than half of its stored armoured and artillery reserves and is increasingly relying on older, degraded vehicles and cannibalized parts to sustain formations. The small number of tanks in decent depot condition and the large share of units described as irrecoverable limits how rapidly Moscow can replace combat losses without fresh imports or a major domestic ramp-up in production and overhaul capacity. Analysts following the thread say the implications are twofold. The Kremlin can still field large numbers of vehicles, but many are old, fragile, or require significant work. And the pool of easy, fast-to-refit replacements is shrinking. forcing Moscow to stretch repair timelines or commit lower quality machines to front-line roles. Earlier, Russia's Ministry of Defense began auctioning off dozens of destroyed tanks and armored vehicles as scrap metal. The auction includes T-80, T-72B3 and T-62 tanks, along with infantry fighting vehicles, armored personnel carriers and MT-LB multipurpose armored tractors. Officially, the listings describe the lots as ferrous and non-ferrous scrap metal, yet photos clearly show destroyed combat vehicles with visible battle damage. Russian authorities are expressing concern over the potential consequences of the return home of thousands of soldiers and former prisoners who fought in the war against Ukraine. According to the Ukrainian Foreign Intelligence Service, Moscow acknowledges that demobilization could lead to a surge in crime and the destabilization of the very system built around Putin. According to Ukrainian intelligence, the Kremlin is already drawing parallels with the 1990s, when Afghan war veterans formed gangs and criminal groups. Today, the situation could repeat itself, only on a much larger scale. The Kremlin estimates that veterans could become a catalyst for criminal and political destabilization, capable of undermining the system built around personal loyalty to Putin, the statement said. The reasons for concern are quite obvious. Among those returning from the front, many have suffered severe psychological trauma or have a history of violence. Added to this is the striking contrast between the pay they received at the front and the poverty of everyday life. Salaries and bonuses during the war are several times higher than the average Russian income. Returning to a reality of low wages and a devastated economy, many veterans could become the source of a new social upheaval. The situation is exacerbated by the fact that tens of thousands of convicts have been drafted into the army. According to the Russian Penitentiary Service, between 120,000 and 180,000 prisoners have been mobilized. A significant number of them have already returned to the cities, and with them, the number of serious crimes has risen sharply. Since 2023 alone, nearly 1,000 cases of murder and beating resulting in death have been filed with Russian military courts. The number of convictions for such crimes has been growing annually, from 38 in 2022 to 377 in the first 9 months of 2025 alone. Instead of addressing the problem, the authorities chose the familiar path of intensifying repression. The penitentiary service was authorized to more actively use special means against prisoners: batons, stun guns, water cannons, and even service dogs. Formally, this was to protect the staff, but in reality, it was to suppress those who no longer feared the authorities. Ukrainian intelligence estimates that the return of people accustomed to violence and impunity could become an internal time bomb for the Kremlin. If at the beginning these veterans were the support of the regime, then over time they could become the force that will destroy Russia from within. Analysts note.